Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Eiffel Tower podcast. My name is Oliver G. This is a show about Paris, a show about France, and today's episode is about how to capture this city in a photograph. And it's a bit of a different episode, much like the last one. It was recorded live in front of an online audience. The guest, Augusta Sagnelli. I'll talk about how you can find her at the end of the episode. She's the one who photographed the whole season, the countdown season, all the 20 arrondissements. She's been with us every step of the way, and she captured it beautifully, if I may say so myself. So we talk about, tips for everybody to take photos themselves, the process that we, captured Paris together over 6 months, and a little bit about what makes Paris so special when it comes to photographing it. Hint, it's the light, the magical light. So this is an episode with Augusta Sagnelli. The people who watched live are Patreon supporters. And after we pressed stop, we hung around for another half an hour answering everybody's questions. We got really good questions. I think 40, 50 people showed up, and people had really intelligent questions. So if you want more, if you want to see the replay or hear the replay of the extra bit, the extra half an hour, patreon.com/the Eiffel Tower. Your support of this show is how we can afford to hire photographers and keep improving things. So jump in, help us continue to improve the Eiffel, patreon.com/the Eiffel Tower. But I'm going to introduce you now to Augusta and a chat about how to photograph Paris. Augusta Sagnelli, welcome to the studio.
Good to be here.
So I think before we get into anything, I think we should start with the headline topic, the basics of how to photograph Paris. Before we even explain who you are, what you've done, and what we've done together, I think we start on this basic, this basic concept, because 30 million plus tourists are coming to Paris every year. I would assume all 30 million of them are taking pictures. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that people could be doing better right from the get-go?
Yes. Without being rude, absolutely. Doesn't even come from a technical photography standpoint. I think it's just that we see the same photos of Paris over and over again, and we think that we have to come here for the first time and get those photos to prove that we were here. When in fact, I think it'd be better to leave your camera at home and just walk around and see those things and actually take them in. If you really want to photograph Paris and take photos that feel original and that feel new and that feel unique to your experience, my first piece of advice would be to look less at the things and the places and more about what's going on in the city. So like the people, the birds that perch up on top of the lampposts, how the light bounces off of one building and reflects these little shiny, glorious little golden orbs of light on the other building, or how the whole city reflects in the pavement after it rains. My favorite time to photograph Paris is after it's rained, just like a couple minutes after it stopped. So I think if you can first think about not photographing the stuff of Paris and more photographing what's happening in it, it's such a beautiful background anyway that it always looks like Paris. The cobblestones look like the cobblestones. The streets are all that limestone. The roofs are all that gray. Like, you can't avoid that. So it's almost like, don't look at that. Look at the life that's happening inside of it.
I think good answer. And I want to get a little bit more into this in a second, but I think I want to rewind too about how we first worked together. Which I think is a story I probably haven't told on the podcast properly. I didn't even know how well you remember it, but it's how I became a fan of your work and how and why I ended up wanting you on this last season. What happened, for everybody who hasn't heard the story, is you'd kind of moved to Paris fairly recently at the time, and I needed a photographer for a walk show I was doing down Rue Claire. This is ages ago now.
I remember, and it was really cold. I think it was cold, and I woke up in the morning, and my husband said, Oliver needs a photographer in 30 minutes. Can you be at Rue Claire? And I remember getting out of bed, throwing on some clothes. I hadn't had a job since I moved to Paris. I'd only been here for a few months, and I had no work. And so I was like, I'll do anything. And I grabbed my camera and I went and I met you.
Yeah, and it was cool because I had never seen your work or anything, and what happened is I had a few other photographers who I'd worked with, who I'd interviewed, and I went through this whole list, and everybody was unavailable, and I was thinking, who do I know? And then your name, like I don't even know if we'd met actually.
I don't think we'd ever met. No, maybe on Zoom or something, but we never met in person.
And then so Augusta came out and we sat down and because it was for a walk show, we're doing something live, and I was like, okay, here's the idea. I can't really explain much more than this. Capture this moment. Capture this next hour. And then we walked down Rue Claire, and I was essentially I was ignoring you because I was filming live, which was that also sounds rude, but it was kind of became a theme for the countdown season as well, which we'll talk about in a second. But we walked down Rue Claire, you took these pictures, and then at the end I was like, I wonder what is going to come from that. And then when you sent the pictures, everyone can go and Google them and find them out. I remember being like, I'd never even seen Rue Claire until then, right? The capturing of the details of this market street that everyone's walked down 1,000 times, and you just had captured like the feel of it. And I was like, whoa, this is great. I got to work with Augusta again. And then the countdown came along, and I was like, let's do that 20 times in a row. And I want to get back to how to photograph, but maybe this is a good place to do it. How did you capture a street like Rue Claire? Knowing also you'd never worked with me, you didn't really know what I wanted. What's the vibe? How do we capture streets like that?
I think it's about not taking these big, wide photos of everything, because you get a lot of textures and a lot going on, and not that that's like a rule that doesn't work, but if you want to capture something that's more the essence of it or the feeling of it, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about like, don't just take a photo of the street, like notice how the light is coming through the bistro chairs and making these little shadows. And you can take the photo of the ashtray with the used cup of espresso, and it tells a story about Rue Claire and what goes on there. And not to say that particular bistro chair couldn't also be in another arrondissement somewhere else, but if you contextualize it and say, I spent 20 minutes on this street and this is what I saw, that photo is going to give you more of a sense of what it felt like, instead of just snapping the street and saying, this is what was in front of my face. Notice specific things about it. Like we noticed how in that shoot particularly, there was the reflection of the market guy in the window of the chocolates. And so you had the chocolates and the reflection of the people on the street, and Rue Claire is chaotic, and there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of storefronts and stuff out on the street, and you can show that without literally showing it. You can show it with the textures closer. I remember my teachers in college always saying, you're not close enough, get closer. So I think just move in and like zoom in on details and then pull back.
That's I remember, because also you and I got to know each other pretty well, because we like twice a week spend an hour very close to each other, and Lena just walking around the city. I remember you said a story about when you were studying photography, about what was it, they sent you into maybe this is a typical photography thing, but they sent you into a cafe.
Yeah, it was a cafe assignment, and the whole assignment was to go to a place where you were limited. You couldn't move. So it was, just usually 4 walls, or just somewhere that was a really great example of this would be a terrace outside of a cafe in Paris. And take as many types of photos of that space until you've completely exhausted it. So take photos that a food photographer would take photos that a beverage photographer would take photos that a family portrait photographer would take, an architecture photographer, a wildlife photographer, maybe there's a butterfly. Like, use any type of photography, any style of photography, any approach, but you can't move from that space. So get up on a chair or shoot from through the legs, or you can take thousands of photos, and then when you think that you're done, there's still more to be seen. So I think if you feel like your photos are feeling boring, or they're feeling like the same thing you see all the time, it's just a matter of changing literally your perspective, your physical perspective, and you'll notice that you have photos that don't feel like everyone else's. And I really think too, photographing the light, like see the light and photograph the light. What it falls on in Paris, chances are it's beautiful, it's interesting, it's nuanced. And I think photographing light, a lot of my favorite photos from our sessions were just noticing the light and how it moves through the city.
So thinking about what the light is hitting and how it's hitting rather than getting the shot of what everybody's looking at, sort of. Yeah.
Exactly.
I want to, there are definitely going to be people listening, maybe people watching us right now thinking, I just got my iPhone, I'm never going to get a fancy camera. Do I care about this photography chat? I just want to take a picture of the Eiffel Tower from the other side of the Champ de Mars. Do you think that they've got a point and they should just be happy, or do you think that their life will be enriched by making that extra effort?
I, for one, actually, I take a lot of photos on my iPhone. I have a couple apps on my phone that I really like, and to be frank, sometimes I don't feel like carrying around my camera when I'm going for a walk. Especially if there's a chance of rain and I don't know if I'm going to be out for 2 hours or 5 hours or 6 hours. So I use my phone, and it's not even the newest one. I think it's an X, so that's the 10. And it takes great photos. It doesn't really matter. The quality of the photo is not it. It's like, what are you noticing? And you can zoom in, you can get below, you can take a photo of just how the light hits the bistro chair and the water on the top of the cafe table after it's rained. Like, you can notice all those things and capture it on a phone still. And it's a matter of, I think, again, just there's a way to document, this is proof I was there, or to photograph how something felt and like the essence of something. And I think that's what we were doing often whenever you and I were taking photos of a place. Is it wasn't just, a Google Maps photo of the storefront. It was, how does the paint chip off of the storefront, because it's been there for so long. And that's when you start to get photos that feel more like like what it felt like to be there. So iPhones are, I'm not an anti-iPhone photographer.
I want to get to the I want to get to the angles in a second, and I'm not going to do this again. But I see a quick question came in from Lynn. Which apps do you use on your iPhone? So quickly, is there a good one that we could use?
Yeah, I swear I should get sponsored by this app. The amount of times I recommend people to download it. It is called Nomo, Nomo. You can use it partially for free, or you can pay like $18 for the year. And it simulates all these different types of film and cameras. And I just think I take photos on my iPhone and people are like, I can't believe you took that on an iPhone. So
it's funny, when you said that, I saw a bunch of people writing down what you said. So Nomo, there you go. Now, I want to switch to something you said about the angles that's kind of funny. And it leads into what we did and how we did this season. But when from the beginning, and it's your style, like you're always jumping, like you're always ducking down somewhere, shooting through a window or whatever. And at first I remember being like, what is she doing down there? It's like a paparazzi angle or something down in the corner, like looking at a table. And then when I saw the finished work, and then for the next 20 episodes, I remember being like, oh yeah, she's doing like an Augusta picture. And not only did I know her now, how they came out and they're great, but since when I walk around Paris and when I travel, me and Lena often we go, beautiful, that's beautiful, Augusta would take that really well. So unfortunately, we don't take them, but I can see, I feel like the way I see things has changed through your eye, sort of, even if I don't have your eye.
That's so cool. That's a really cool thing to hear. But I that's step one, is like seeing it, because you just don't notice some things. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming for me to walk in Paris. Like, if I tell someone I'm going to be there in 15 minutes, I know I should say 30, because I end up stopping to take so many photos. Or I look down a tiny street and I go, oh my God, I have to look at that light, how it's going on that chair, then and I run down, and it usually takes me a lot longer to get places than I expect.
It's perfect lead into this next question. How did you, and I'm going to take everyone behind the scenes for how we took these pictures in a second, but how did you enjoy, I'm choosing my words carefully, did you like working in the style that I asked you to work in, or was it annoying?
No, I loved it, because it's kind of how I photograph Paris anyway when I do it on my own. It's nice to know that we're going to go from point A to point B, and then I don't get kind of lost in it. And I love an assignment, and I think that comes from my very technical schooling of photography. I love an assignment, and I love nailing an assignment and getting it done on time. So for me, it was always like a challenge or like a relay race of photography within our hour of shooting, and I really enjoyed it.
Let's talk about, so to paint the scene for how we did it from the beginning. So I think we improved from the beginning, but I think people would like to hear how sort of crazy it was. From the beginning, we went to the Vieux Belleville in the 20th, and that was more like an assignment, like the cafe thing you talked about. You were sitting in a corner, and you caught it. It was really nice. But then, like from a practical point of view, when we got to the 19th, I was like, I had these great pictures, but only of one place in the 20th, and I wanted more of the district. But, you know, obviously Augusta couldn't follow us for 24 hours. We're like 1 hour, let's see what we can get. And then in the 19th, I sort of planned it out, and I was like, how do we capture in 1 hour the vibe of a neighborhood? So I was like, we go to the canal, and we get everything that we can. Like that one was really
that was intense. Yeah.
Yeah, because we started with the floating bookshop, and then we just went all the way along the canal. And then by the time we got to the 18th, I was like, got to capture more. Because that was all just canal pictures, even though it was great and that was the focus. By the 18th, I was like, let's essentially do a walking tour. By the time we got to the 5th, let's say, it was kind of psycho. Like,
well, also because, I mean, I think it was a physical limitation too with those outside arrondissements, because they are bigger and more spread out in kind of weird ways. So it was a little harder when we got down into like the second. It was like I felt like we could have photographed the entire thing in 45 minutes. So I think that was like we were up against that, but also then we were just getting better and better and better at it. But I loved when you would be like, okay, for tomorrow, like we're going to meet here, but you're going to get to the cafe first. You're going to photograph the cafe because you don't need me to be there. And then me and Lena are going to meet you on the corner at the park. We're going to stroll around the park, get a couple photos of us in there. And then we're going to, and it would be like, how are we doing on time? And like, sometimes we would finish early. I even think, and you'd be like, well, if you have enough time, like, why don't you go get a ticket to that museum, snap some photos on the inside because we were there yesterday and it was so cool. And so I think we really got it down to a science. And I loved in some parts where you were like, you know, go across the street and like there, and then I'll be in there. I'm going to buy some cheese and then we'll meet on the canal and then we'll take some photos of that. And it was like we just maximized our time really, really well. And I think too, because you trusted me to get the shots that were needed, that you weren't asking me every 2 seconds, can I see if you got it? It was just like you knew and we moved on, and it was really good flow.
I don't think I ever asked to look at a photo during a shoot. Is that normal?
No. But I will say, actually, I've been very lucky. I have very trusting clients. I think it's a confidence thing. Like I tell people going in, like, I'm going to get the shot no matter what. Like that's my job. So I've been very lucky since moving here, actually, that I don't have a lot of people that want to breathe over my shoulder and approve everything along the way. Especially when we have a short time, it's like you want to maximize the time taking photos instead of, you know, nitpicking about if a little to the left or a little to the right kind of thing.
I thought it was like, when I look back on it, because now this is like, we started this 6 months ago or something. When I look back on like the sort of, you know, the fun memories was like, or the kind of madness of it all would be like walking through a church. In fact, everything that Lena and I did was quick, because to spend 24 hours, to see anything, you have to do it quickly in the way we're doing it. But like the three of us would walk through a church, and I didn't ask anything. I'd just be like, you know what to do, get this church. And then like Lena and I walked through, because we were also doing videos at the same time sometimes. Trying not to have you in the back of the shot either, even though I think you snuck into a few of the videos that we talked about in the last one. But it was just funny. It was fun, and it was cool to see. It was cool to see the way that it all came out. There was one extra thing that we didn't talk about the process, is we were really keen on having photos of ourselves, and something I haven't talked about why we wanted to do that was partly like to show that we're doing everything and to make it personal. You know, because I notice on social media, if I share a beautiful picture that anyone's taken of anything, it doesn't really necessarily say the Eiffel Tower, or it doesn't say Oliver G. And so when people are scrolling through, maybe they won't even know what they're looking at. So we wanted a real healthy mix of stuff that we were in, but also of everything we were visiting. Did you find it, and I think this is a question I stole from one of the viewers, so thanks to the viewer, but did you find it challenging knowing that you had essentially two tasks going on at once? Like it wasn't just a family photo shoot or a city photo shoot.
That's interesting because I do take a lot of family photos and couples photos. In fact, I have one tomorrow morning. But I think because we were in these beautiful settings already, and you guys are always so stylish and like looking great and so easygoing, that we would be like photographing something over here, and I would turn to my left, and Lena would just be like holding the baby and like doing something very nonchalant with her hat or fixing her glasses, and it was already a photo, and I'd be like, wait, and I'd turn and I'd get that moment, and then I would kind of stick you in and be like, oh, this would be a great moment if you came in here, or I think the two kind of went really well together, because really that's kind of what I'm doing anyway when I'm doing family photos. It's like I'm always assessing the location and the light and seeing where people would be best in it. So I think we always prioritized like the photos of Paris and what we were there to capture, but adding you guys in was just kind of like a pretty easy and organic addition, and I mean it was always so much fun to see. We got so many great photos of you guys and the baby. It was so fun.
We got a lot of great pictures that we never shared as well. There's a lot of like, I didn't want it to be the Oliver, Lena and Otis show, like it's always meant to be the Paris show, but we got so many cool things just in general. Go on.
I was just going to say, I loved the moment that when we were in the opera house and Lena had this great outfit on, and we were like kind of in there. We're supposed to be quick. You had the baby, and but the light was so good, and we had the whole balcony to ourselves outside. And Lena and I had like probably 3 minutes of full on like only photographing her, like posing and like with her bag and everything, and you were like, come on ladies, like we gotta go. I just, it was like a funny memory I have of that.
As that was happening, my son threw a bottle of water in the middle of the opera. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And these are the things that were happening, like all racing the time and even racing the time, knowing that the balcony is only going to be empty for 10 seconds or whatever, to get the shots and the videos. And he threw the bottle down and it broke, and like a liter of water went all over one of those interior balconies of the opera. And I was like, we gotta get the photo and clean up and get onto the next place. And it was just the amount of times things like that happen as well. Bringing a baby on a countdown season of the Eiffel Tower is a recipe for disaster. But I'm glad that it all worked out. Now on to Paris to finish. I want to talk about your favorite arrondissements to photograph. But first I want to put it in perspective. How do you feel Paris compares to other cities that you worked in? I know you're from New Orleans.
I lived in New Orleans. I lived in NOLA, New Orleans, Nouvelle Orleans, however you want to say it, a million different ways to say it, for 6 years. So that was my city for 6 years. I grew up in Connecticut, and so I was very close to Manhattan. I was always in New York, and then I went to school in Santa Barbara, right next to Los Angeles. So I have always been close to a big city. But this is my first time actually living in a big city.
How does Paris compare to big cities like New York and New Orleans when it comes to photography?
I mean, it's absolutely my favorite to photograph. New Orleans is a close second, but there's also a lot of Spanish and French influence there with the architecture. And you're near the river, and it has kind of all of the similar things and characters in the streets, and people dressed up in ways that you're not used to seeing. I love being in Paris around Fashion Week. But I think Paris is by far the most easy to get around. It's the most walkable. It has the best weather all year round, I think. Has the 4 seasons, change of season. It's my favorite.
Good answer. And now we've got to finish on something that's a little bit controversial, because I saw your answers to this and it didn't make me... Firstly, I think you wrote 4 when I asked for your favorite. So I asked, same as I asked Eddie in the last one for his favorite arrondissement to make videos of. What were your favorite 3 arrondissements to photograph? In order, 3rd, 2nd, 1st.
In order.
So 3rd favorite.
The 11th.
Okay. We did a lot of outside passages there, a lot of the vibe of the... Okay, yeah.
Second would be the 2nd/9th, because they're so small and they kind of overlap, and you can zigzag very easily in between them, and a lot of my favorite places are there to photograph.
See, this is controversial to say the 2nd and 9th, but we'll let it slip. What about the number 1? What was your favorite district to photograph?
The 18th.
And why was that?
I think it was the quirkiness of the buildings, the fact that it's not flat. I love that there's a change in elevation. And there's just this village vibe there. And the light is different when you're up there. When you're not down in the kind of valley of the city and you're up on that hill, the light is definitely different.
Cool. Okay. And I asked you to come up with your favorite pictures out of all the... do you know how many pictures you took total for this season?
Thousands.
I mean, yeah, okay. So out of all the thousands, I asked Augusta to pick her favorite ones. I'm going to share that as a blog post on theeiffeltower.com this week, which will also include a link where you can find more of Augusta's work and get in contact with her about booking photo tours of Paris if you want. But Augusta Sagnelli, thank you for all the photographs and thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So there you have it. As I said, another half an hour of questions. You can watch the video or listen to the audio by heading over to patreon.com/the Earful Tower. If you want more from Augusta, you can search for her in the show notes. She has a website, augustasagnelli.com. Sagnelli, Sagnelli. You can also find her on Instagram at Augusta Sagnelli. Just search for her name. It's in the show notes. And she'll take pictures of you in Paris maybe one day. Get in touch with her. And we're also working on the idea of combining Paris tours, like walking tours, with her photography. So if you want that kind of live capturing a moment in Paris, get in touch about one of these Earful shoot walks. I'll probably come up with a better name for it than that. But the idea of... not just family pictures in front of the Eiffel Tower like all those other photographers seem to do. This is the real deal. We've got another episode like this coming up. It's me chatting to Press Maxim, who did that intro music you heard at the start. Some call him the Matryoshka of music. It's a mouthful. Matryoshka of music. Some call him the house band, the one-man band. He's the guy that does the music and did the music to fit for every single one of the Arrondissement videos and podcast episodes, often themed. If you're a new listener around, go back and listen to some of those ones where the music fits with the district. So yeah, to watch that chat live, patreon.com/the Earful Tower. Help these cogs to keep on spinning. Thank you for listening to the Earful Tower podcast. I'm your host, Oliver G, and I'll talk to you again very soon.